This is Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
Welcome to this episode of Forge Daily. I am your host, Mackenzie Barwell. Today is August 20th, 2024, and as I said yesterday, today I am joined by the CPL's Mitch Tierney. He and I discuss everything from his thoughts on Forge's recent win against Vancouver, how he thinks they should approach a strong and newly galvanized group like York United this Friday, and how that result may affect their momentum going into the semifinal of the Canadian Championship. I should mention before we get into it, the Forge players recognized in the CPL Team of the Week, Jordan Hamilton up top and Ali Javapur in the center midfield, both of whom Mitch and I will talk about a little bit more in depth, but also, and importantly, goalkeeper Jassim Khalilat. He put in two very impressive and important shifts this past week, the first being on Wednesday when he made a pair of saves and kept a clean sheet against the Halifax Wanderers, and then on Friday making three more saves and helping Forge to secure that 2-1 win over Vancouver in Langley. So with that out of the way, just making sure the credit is given where it's due, let's now get into my conversation with Mitch and today's episode. Mitch, thank you so much for joining me again. I'm really excited to have you because this is I'm going on a little bit of like a CPL Analyst Tour right now. On Friday, I had Charlie. Monday, I'll have Adam. And then today, you. Some might say best for last. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the opener. That's definitely Charlie. He's the one playing in front of the crowds of,
Yeah, exactly. Right?
We'll see what the numbers pull up, but
Okay. The numbers will speak for themselves, eh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was just having a look at your team of the week here. I know you were doing that just a second ago, so I want to pick your brain on that. But before that, I have to get your thoughts on this Vancouver game. Do you think they are happy or relieved coming away with the 3 points after that one?
I think they're pretty happy. Going away from home, the way Vancouver was able to equalize, and really for most of that second half, it looked like Vancouver were probably going to be the team to score the winner as they were on the front foot. I think they have to be happy with a week where, they hadn't gone back-to-back wins since the start of the season, the first three games of the season, and now they go back to back over the course of a single week. That's incredibly impressive to do. One of the big stories, obviously, around Forge right now is that their main goal scorer this season, Kwasi, has been unavailable for the past two games. So the fact that they're able to keep up their streak, I think it's 10 of the last 12 where they have scored multiple goals in a game, which is pretty impressive for any soccer team. They've scored in 12 straight. So the fact that Poku goes, you've got Jordan Hamilton getting a goal and an assist since coming in for his first back-to-back starts of the season. And then, Bobby always says that you need 23 players, or I think he was trying to count the development players live.
Probably.
Yeah. Plus that, over the course of a season, you need them to all have big moments. And a player like Matteo Schiavoni, who, there's kind of foreshadowing to this because we saw him come off the bench very late against Halifax, and this guy was everywhere, going into tackles, creating chances in the last few minutes of that game, and then he comes off this game, and a player like that to make the run that he did, that's what you need from a player coming off the bench who's hungry to go through the midfield like that. I don't think there was many other players on the pitch, either side, who were going to make that run late in the game. So impressive finish. Does the Luca Toni celebration as well.
Okay, is that what that was? I was so confused.
Yeah, I think so. Again, this might be me showing my age, but Luca Toni was, pardon?
Speculation.
yeah, speculation. But Luca Toni was the Italian striker when they won the World Cup in 2006, I guess that was, and he'd always do the kind of ear thing. So I'd imagine, Matteo being Italian, that's kind of what the connection was from. That's what I just assumed immediately anyway, but yeah.
I've been meaning to ask him about that, so I'll get back to you with your confirmation there.
Okay, sounds good.
But you're so right, because Matteo was that, I guess, energizer bunny, for lack of a better term, for them. Coach Bobby said in the press conference after, there was not a lot of gas left in the tank, especially from the midfield board, just not being able to make that run either. Whether or not it stems from their flight being delayed, I think anywhere between 4 and 6 hours the night before, or of course their congested schedule, Matteo needed to step up in that moment, which he did. I want to ask you about Jordan Hamilton, because he was included in the team of the week, and you just said it there, a goal and an assist. But what else have you been liking for him since he's come back into the lineup with Kwasi's absence?
Yeah, I think it's just similar to what Kwasi was doing, is he's getting into those good positions. Before he scored against Halifax, he could have had 2, maybe 3 goals, in terms of, where he was getting into in the box. And when, they've been so used to having Kwasi there, when you're playing those same balls and there's another guy who's, in the similar positions, that's exactly what you want for them. And also linking up really well, like that pass to Dav, that's a really, cold play where he gets a gift of a pass from Rocco Romeo played out to him. And instead of, maybe just first time panicking and launching the shot himself, he takes the millisecond to play the pass through. Like that's, Jordan Hamilton is obviously an incredibly experienced striker. He's played, at the highest levels in North America. He's played in the, CONCACAF Champions Cup final. And, I think he would have wanted his season to go better than it has so far. So now that he gets this opportunity, I don't think he's going to, miss it.
Yeah, no, definitely an opportunity for redemption here too. Or not even redemption, but just a moment to prove himself after probably not getting as many minutes as he would have liked up until this point. I want to shift to this matchup against York on Friday because we need to contextualize it a little bit here. As many of the Forge fans likely know, they have yet to concede a game to York. But now we're seeing this completely different version of this team. They're in contention to win the regular season, obviously with a new staff, new head coach. So what do you think should be the approach for Forge here, and should they expect more than they have in previous matchups?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Forge in this game is to match the intensity of this York United team because, obviously Forge have another game in Toronto, maybe a couple of days later that might be kind of in the back of their mind. And that's been kind of a thing going on all season is, Canadian Championship is a whole nother thing that they've got to deal with. But for this York team, like this is their cup final. They, after especially losing to Cavalry at home, they're going to really want to prioritize this game and make sure, again, it could be a huge statement for them. Like you said, the results against Forge have not gone their way. And that's kind of the one thing that I think a lot of people, in terms of considering York a title contender, is like, okay, but can they beat Forge? Can they finally beat Forge? Like that's kind of the one hurdle standing in their way. So they'll know that. They'll really want to, even, when Ricardo Pascal came, his first press conference before the season, like one of the first things he mentioned was like, we need to get ahead of Forge. Like that's kind of their goal. They still haven't been able to do that this season, but again, an entirely different team than what Forge has played so far. Maybe not in terms of personnel, but certainly in terms of mentality. And the one thing for York under Ben-Hami Moore is whenever they've dropped points, and they haven't done that much, they've won the next game every time. So again, they're going to want to keep that streak going. And if Forge can't match the intensity that York's certainly going to bring to this game at home, like they could be in a bit of trouble in this one.
Yeah, interesting. No, that's the next thing that I was going to ask you in terms of that new leadership, because as you said, this isn't a situation where the squad has been completely turned over. It's a lot of the same personnel. So do you think that recent success they've had can be attributed to the motivation that they've gotten from him?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Motivation, and also just, he's found some new roles for players. He shifted to a back three, which might not be the case against Forge because Oswaldo Leon, I believe, is going to be suspended. So they might see a back two, but that's helped guys like Max Ferrari to get a little bit further forward as a wing back, and he's been able to create there. They've been playing Elijah Adekubi as like a deep lying central midfielder, and he's turned into CPL Sergio Busquets in that position. Again, a player who's been around the league for a long time, but I think we're seeing the best he's ever played. Juan Cordova, who we were convinced was a fullback, is now playing central midfield and has been excellent in that position. I mean, Brian Wright, he hasn't necessarily been, I think he had 2 goals, 2 assists last season, and he's on, 9 goals, 6 assists or something like that, top of both of those categories. So, yeah, I think that he's getting the best out of so many players who we knew were talented, but we didn't necessarily know had this in them, this level in them this year. And then you add in a bunch of the new signings they've made, a lot of guys coming out of Mexico, and the connections that, certainly the Pascals and Mora have. Like, this is as exciting a York United team as we've ever seen in the Canadian.
Well, it's interesting. Another stat that I heard in the broadcast between the York and Cavalry match was that they're at 9 wins on the season thus far in comparison to their 11 total won last season. Another guy that I want to point out, of course, many Forge fans, the community is very familiar with Mo Babouli, but how dangerous do you think he will be? Because even in that loss to Cavalry, you saw the amount of opportunities created, I think, that stemmed from his movement and play on the ball.
Yeah, well, he was the league's player of the month last month, so certainly that was more of an omission on my part for not mentioning him, because I do think he's been one of the players who, I mean, he was injured towards the end of the Martin Nash era, so that was obviously part of why he wasn't contributing very much. Players tend not to contribute much when they're not on the field, but I think the one thing we've seen under Benjamin Morris, he's shifted him a little bit further forward. Like under Martin Nash, they were kind of playing a 4-4-2 towards the end, and he was playing as kind of a wide midfielder where he wasn't able to get into good positions. And I think he had like 7 touches in the box in his first 5 games of the season. He's up into like 25 or something since Benjamin Morris taken over. So
that's crazy. Yeah.
There's a big shift in the areas he's been able to get into. Like before he was maybe playing those passes into the box, and now he's the one receiving them, and we've seen the goal scoring numbers certainly reflect that. So Babouli is unquestionably always going to be a player you have to watch now, but especially now that he's getting kind of closer to goal and finding those more dangerous positions.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Only 7 touches in the opposing box in his first 5 games is insane.
Yeah, it wasn't the Mo Babouli that we've kind of come to know, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to the thing you're saying about TFC, because this, as you said, has been a conversation throughout the season, having the Canadian Championship in the back of Forge's mind, and I'm sure Pacific as well. How influential do you think this result will be to their time at BMO? Do you see this as being pivotal in the way that they go out and perform next Tuesday?
Yes and no. Like, again, I do think this team is one of the best in even the region as a whole, in terms of kind of siloing the different parts of their seasons and being able to rebound from anything that happened the week before and put in a good performance. But I also think they're on such a momentum kick right now. Like, I almost wonder if the Vancouver game, like, they don't get that late goal if they hadn't just beaten Halifax and beaten Atletico Ottawa the week before that. Like, there is something to be said about different players scoring and different people being in certain confidence pockets in the season. Like, that does matter a lot. So again, if they're able to go out and beat York, like, the confidence that they have going into that Toronto FC game will be that much higher. And another thing I'd point out is the way that Forge have been playing over the past few weeks, in terms of maybe giving up a little bit more of the ball and playing that more defensive style, but still controlling the game without the ball. Like, they aren't losing, they certainly aren't losing goal scoring opportunities because they have less of the ball. Like, again, soccer is not how much of the ball you have, it's what you do with the ball. And Forge are demonstrating that perfectly over the past few weeks. This is a style that I think is really, really going to benefit them well heading into not only against York United, but against Toronto FC especially. Like, knowing that Toronto FC have to come out and they have to score at least 1 in that game in order to progress. Forge are now more comfortable than I think I've ever seen them in terms of, being solid in that defensive shape, but also if you give them a half opportunity of space, we saw Elman Cisse just book it up the sideline against Vancouver FC and create a goal there. Like, we're seeing different counterattacking opportunities. So I think that's something you should be excited about if you're a Forge supporter, is that they're playing kind of the perfect style right now to, beat a lot of different teams.
Yeah, it's taking everything out of me right now not to talk over you, because I just want to be like, yes, there's so many things I want to write down that you just said. One being Cisse. Okay, bucket is the only way to describe the way that this guy operates on the field. He's everywhere. Number 2, I don't know if you and Adam communicated before this interview, but you guys are so on the same page and right to point out that Forge's style of play has been a lot more adaptable than we've seen in previous seasons, or even maybe toward the beginning of this season, in the sense that you're right, they are comfortable sitting back and defending or taking the opportunities when they have them, even if they don't, to maintain possession for most of the game. And I think another thing too, to your point about the confidence about this group, and I think a big contributor to that is the depth of the group right now and the way that the substitutions performed against Vancouver. Of course, Matteo being the biggest one. there were different looks that we saw, especially with Kyle sitting this one out, getting some rest. Daniel stepping up into the midfield. And of course, Cisse, as we said, will just kind of go anywhere. So what are the kinds of looks that you expect, and how do you think they'll take advantage of that depth?
I wonder if we do see a pretty similar roster between the two games. Like, there's no travel. I think if there was a game to rest players, it was against Vancouver, and, Ali Jabrapor resting as well, which is something we haven't really seen this season. He's been kind of that defensive midfielder every single game.
Yeah.
Good thing is when you have one of the best, probably the best number 6 in the league, you have another one in Ashniote Janssen, who's probably, could be one of the best 6s in the league to step in as well. So, I think we'll probably see them roll a very similar lineup into the two games, especially in attack. Like, they are still kind of figuring it out with Jordan Hamilton back in the lineup, or Taryn Campbell, or whoever they decide to go with. Like, they are, they are still figuring that aspect out. So I wonder if they do give kind of their first choice attacking unit a chance to get as sharp as possible before they head into, obviously, a game against Toronto FC. I wonder if that's something we see.
Okay, Mitch, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for joining me again. Seriously.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad Adam Jenkins gave me his notes so I can fill in properly. And it's always a pleasure.
That'll wrap up today's episode. A friendly reminder that tomorrow we will have another episode of Behind the Beard. Thursday, back on schedule with Max Access. And then Friday, everybody's got a road trip to York Lions Stadium.
This has been Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.